Pags. I mean, if you watch for on a regular basis, you know what we stand for. It's an apologetics podcast. We defend the Christian worldview, but many times we talk about politics, society, what influences our family life, how Christianity could be logically and reasonably implemented in your life, ultimately leading you to Christ and a relationship with Christ. But it's R-rated because we have real, raw conversations that hopefully lead people to a redemptive relationship with a first century Jew named Jesus. And everything changes after that. Today is a special show. I'm biased. I admit it. I'm going to try to tone it down and keep it PG with him, even though when we talk offline, it's not anything but PG. But he's a dear friend of mine, a brother. I consider him a brother and one of my closest friends, Joe Pags, well-renowned, nationally syndicated radio host, radio celebrity. I don't know what you call him. He wears shirts that are way too tight for him, but it makes him feel young. What, Joe? Pags, please.
It makes me feel young. That's what it is. First of all, I've never cursed on a microphone, so I know that you're R-rated, but I will not be cursing tonight. I mean, I've been doing this 37 years, but I just don't think now offline we're kind of disgusting in what we say to each other, but on here I'm just not going to be able to bring myself to listen. Nico, thanks for having me on. George, thanks for having me on. I love the program, and it's an honor for me to be here.
Well, Pags, you're a dear friend. We met years ago. I was DA. I'll give the story really quickly. So I was district attorney. Pags he's a provocateur, commentary. He made a comment about a case that the previous DA had left to me on purpose. It was dealing with the murder of a police chief of a small town surrounding municipality. And we were dealing with a young man that I knew had mental health issues and that was not going to, there's no way to seek the death penalty. Of course, it was just known that if you murder a police officer, you seek the death penalty. Get it? I understand that normally. But the kid was 19. He had mental health issues. There was a lot going on behind the scenes that I wasn't at liberty to share. So Pags leaves a message on my Facebook. I think he did Pags like at 2 a.m. because he's a vampire. He goes to bed so late. And so, and my stupid ass was up late too. And I responded to people. I mean, I don't just let people take swipes at me. So I would stay up late responding, not all bad comments, responding, people answering questions. I was new to the position and I wanted to serve the people. And that's why I responded to Pags. And he goes, why don't you come on the show and talk about it then? I said, I will. And so I called in the next, I think, was it next day, Pags? Or the
probably was the next day, yeah. And I think that I probably said something like, if this case doesn't rise to the level of the death penalty, what case does? And I really wanted to clear my head. And let me say this for those who are watching. Nico is one of the only people who I've dared to come on my show who actually took the dare and came on my show. And I don't do it to shut people down. Like, I've been calling out Ron Nierenberg forever. And you and I saw him at some bowling tournament, I don't know, 7 years ago or something. He promised he'd come on. Ron has still never come on the show. He's afraid of me. Joaquin Castro is afraid of me. So when I call people like Greg Casar out, he's afraid of me. You weren't, and I don't do that to make people afraid of me. I do that to say I literally will have the conversation. And you and I became fast friends because you allowed me to have that conversation. You could have blown me off and said, shut up, you big conservative idiot or whatever. But you came on and we became fast friends because you weren't afraid to say why you felt that way. And the audience got a lot out of that. I wish everybody would have done what you do.
Well, thanks, Dad. Well, we were on the phone for 20 minutes beforehand. Yes. And then he said, what do we really disagree on? I go, it sounds like nothing. It's like, well, let's get on the show. We wasted a good conversation offline, but we had a wonderful conversation. Yep. We became fast friends, dear friends. Ever since then, he's been to my house multiple times, and I just love him to death. And we like to bust each other's balls, but we love each other.
I don't know where the new house is, though. I haven't even gotten the address yet. I'm just letting people know.
What are you talking about?
You're like a creeper.
You're stalking him. I can't get rid of you. He's like herpes. I can't get rid of him.
Come on.
So all joking aside, Pags, I love your opinion. You're always very thoughtful. I think you push people in the right direction. You question ideology and presuppositions very, very well, and you know how to intellectually talk about topics. And so we've been talking a lot on the show about Islam, and it's really a political movement wrapped in a religion, and we've dissected it many times. We're not going to revisit that type of topic, but there is an overlap between religion and politics. We've talked about that on the show before. I think the Christian church has bought into the lie that keep your religion out of our politics, and I'll start here and I'll punt it to George really quick, Pags, and we want to hear your thoughts. For us, a working definition of politics is a set of ideas advocated by a group of people to affect the lives of others. That's not partisanship. That's politics. Yeah. That is, as many Christians know, Matthew 28:19, go into all nations, making disciples of men, teaching them to obey all that I've commanded. Christ's last marching order for us as Christians to go, the Great Commission, and change people's minds. That is a politically charged statement, not a partisan one, but political, heavenly political.
Yeah.
And so I think the Christian church has fallen for it because Islam doesn't fall for it. Any other religion, quote unquote, or worldview doesn't fall for it. We're the only idiots that fall for it to keep separate. And then we see that the world, the society that we've created or allowed to happen gets influenced by other ideology than maybe a United States, the American story is a Judeo-Christian one. So all that to say, Pags, we wanted to talk about the overlap or the marriage, so to speak, and I'll say the unholy marriage between Islam and the DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America. Did I miss anything, George, before we jump in with Pags?
No, and I think that's the question. I mean, and I would like to really hear your perspective on whether, is that a figment of the imagination, or is there something going on there? I mean, we talk a lot about it. We have our view, but just like to get your perspective on it. I'd like to respond to it.
It's going on. There's an attachment there that it's an unholy attachment that shouldn't be happening. So let's start from the start. Is there a separation of church and state? Absolutely not. There isn't. Every single person them died poor, did so to break away from King George III. They were either Christian or they were deists. They all believed in God. Many of them believed that Jesus was the embodiment of God. So the idea that we somehow were founded on non-Christian values is stupid. It's not true. We're a Judeo-Christian country in that our laws are based on the Magna Carta. Go read it. It mentions God all the time. Based on the Ten Commandments. Hello, it's the Ten Commandments, very biblical. So the idea that we're somehow separated from church and state was an idea that came up when I believe it was Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to the Danbury Baptist Church. And he said, don't worry, we're not going to meddle in what the church is doing. There will certainly still be the separation between church and state. It was to make the church feel good that we will not overwhelm you with our government. It wasn't to keep church out of government. In fact, the first Bible that was ever printed in this country was printed by the House of Representatives. So the idea that we're not a Christian nation is stupid. We're certainly, at the very least, a Judeo-Christian nation, which is great. We accept atheism. You don't believe in anything? Cool. Just follow our moral guide. Just follow our values that are based on, guess what? Judeo-Christian values. The Sharia law and the Hadith and the Quran don't mix well with the Constitution. In fact, the Constitution cannot survive if we were to, in fact, have a religion/political system called Islam. That can't work. Now, if you want to be a Muslim, I've got friends that are Muslims, love them. I've got cousins who, for some reason, are now Muslim. Don't know why, but love them just as much. Having said that, you can be that, but you can't be the full fundamental Islamic person you want to be in this country because we have that piece of paper, the Constitution. You'll notice people like this guy, Abdul Rahman Muhammad al-Sayed, who is now the Democrat nominee out of Michigan, says things, or he has said in his past, we have to get past the Constitution. His campaign buddy, Hassan Piker, who is Cenk Uyghur's nephew, this guy would like to F the Constitution. He said that. I F the Constitution. I burn the Constitution. He's got the Twin Towers burning behind him in his live streams every day. These people hate the country and how it was constructed. Yes. You can only deconstruct the country if you get rid of the Constitution. So what do they want? Get rid of the Constitution. That allows for some sort of theocracy, doesn't it? They also would like to see us get rid of the Senate. Don't know why. They just don't like the Senate. Redo the Electoral College, get rid of the presidency the way that it is, open all jails, have no prisons at all, and reimagine policing. To be honest, a lot of that doesn't sound like Islam, but they're saying the things that they know they can say to get the dumb people to follow what it is that they're doing. If they ever had a chance to take over and make it a theocracy, the first people they would kill are the useful idiots that they're using now to win these elections. So it's a long answer, but that's the way I see it. And what I just said is verifiably true. So can Islam survive in this country? Sure. You could be a Muslim if you want. I asked Pastor Hagee this once. I said, what do you do about a religion that doesn't believe in the values that Christians believe in? He said, you can support anything you want. The First Amendment says freedom of religion, worship however you want, until such a time as you decide, I'm going to worship that rock. When you pick it up to throw it at me, all bets are off. So you can be whatever religion you want to be. Call it the Joe Pags religion. That would be dumb. But call it whatever religion you want it to be. And you can do that provided you stay within the four corners of the Constitution. If you don't want to do that, there are other countries that probably would welcome you.
Well, we didn't even talk about this beforehand. This was just a raw answer. And we were going to say, Pags,
There was no
the
pre-interview,
marriage.
just for those who don't know.
The what?
There was
The
no
what?
pre-interview at all.
No, no, not at all.
Yep.
I mean, there was busting balls pre-interview,
Little
but
bit, yeah.
not talking about it. But no, I think the marriage, Pags, between Islam and the DSA is they both hate the country. They just do the way it is, and they're both authoritarian in nature.
Authoritarian, yeah.
I mean, because under Islam, if you study and everything you said about the Dansbury Baptist, the letter from Thomas Jefferson to the
Right.
Dansbury Baptist in 1801, all that is accurate and very, very good. And the ideology that helped set up civic government was the Judeo-Christian one, and it's an embarrassment of riches, as George always likes to say.
Yes.
But under Islam, you have to be working towards one caliph under a caliphate, one world government. That's why I say this on the show before. Tell me if you agree or don't disagree. When Ben Carson years ago said that a Muslim couldn't be president, he got so much crap for it. It wasn't that he was being anything other than just truthful, because an Islamic person, someone that is truly not a heretic in their religion, has to pledge their allegiance to Sharia, the Hadith, and the Quran. He cannot pledge allegiance to defend and the Constitution of the United States. And so Ben Carson was accurate theologically and ideologically.
Yeah.
He wasn't making a comment about a person. And that's why, Joe, when I talk about these topics, I never talk about Muslims. I'll reference, I know a Muslim, quote unquote, but I don't talk about Muslims, just like I don't talk about Christians per se, unless I'm criticizing one. I talk about Christianity and its ideals and Islam and its ideals. I talk about the ideas.
Right.
Are these ideas, conclusive and, conducive for a constitutional republic?
Yeah, I think, Joe, even as you describe it, the political dynamic that you just described, they're seeking the same outcome, it seems to me, but they're using very different means. When you have inside the DSA a pretty significant constituency that is foreign born, and then you have a bunch of 18, 29-year-olds that are not, they're Native American haters, because we've basically subsidized their hatred. I mean, we got to get the American classroom back. They both hate the traditional American mainstream for different reasons. And so the guy who comes from Somalia couldn't care less about Marxist dialectical, philosophy or theory,
Right.
Materialism. That couldn't care less about that. But he's very interested in the eradication of the American mainstream. And so what's the motivation? One is ethno-nationalist, the other one is Marxist. And they don't really spend a whole lot of time disseminating those differences, because they're singularly focused on the achievement of power and the elimination of the constitutional order as we know it right now, which in their view, they've identified a common evil guy, which is the American white male. So once that's out of the way, to your point, then what? The first thing they'll do is they'll go after each other. And Islam has 1,400 years of success, so my bets are on them.
It's all very interesting. I think you're right. The Somalian doesn't understand Marxism, doesn't think they're doing an ideology, but they want it to be more like Somalia, and they want it to be more like Somalia because of the religion of Somalia. What's interesting, Ilhan Omar, who is from Somalia, who is a U.S. representative out of Minnesota, I think she's District 4 or 5. We all know who she is, obviously. She has said out loud, my job in Congress is to do the work of the Somalian people. You said something interesting. We have these foreign-born people that are in the DSA or the Democrat Party as a whole who were foreign-born. They're not from here. Nancy Mace was on my show recently. She's a friend of mine. She's the U.S. representative out of South Carolina. She'll be out of office soon, but she's starting a podcast doing very well. And she actually has a push in Congress to make it illegal for somebody who is foreign-born to run for office, a federal office at least, and probably should take it to the state offices too, but the states have their own purview because of the 10th Amendment. That said, what would that do? Well, the president already has to be born here, has to be natural born, has to have been here 14 contiguous years, he has to be 35 years or older, and so on. Can't have any allegiance to anybody else. Why wouldn't we extend that to Congress? Why can't somebody be a U.S. representative or a United States senator who wasn't born here? Ilhan Omar, we know, this is a fact, has her allegiance to Somalia first. We know that. She has said so. But yet she still gets to serve because a bunch of idiots allegedly voted her in. They might not have. We don't really know the vote count in Minnesota. They won't turn over the voter rolls. But to go back to your point, I want to make a delineation, and I'm not going to be one of those guys that says, hey, not all Muslims are like that. I'm not that guy. I'm just going to tell you straight. The modern Muslim who loves this country, and there are many, don't follow fundamental Islam. They don't follow the Sharia law. They don't follow the Hadith or the Hadiths. They don't follow the Quran to the letter. They really have modernized. And I think that they love the country as much as just about anybody else. But then there are people like Hassan Piker that I mentioned earlier, who is a guy who was an anchor baby. I think his parents came from, I forget where, I think they might have been Palestinian, I'm not sure. But he's an anchor baby who was born and raised here, lives in a $3 million house, and he wants to burn the Constitution down. That person has been ingrained since birth that the only way for us to succeed is to come in and take over. And George, that's what you were alluding to. It's interesting because Zoran Mamdani in New York, the mayor of New York, literally came to the podium about a month ago and said, like the Prophet Muhammad said, and then he goes on and tells me what the Prophet Muhammad said. And then he said something like, well, the Prophet Muhammad was an immigrant, so we love all immigrants. Yep. He left out the part that the Prophet Muhammad immigrated into Medina, and the Jews welcomed him with open arms until he took the place over. So, I mean, that wasn't mentioned because they think the Americans are dumb. They think that we won't look into the history of the world, and they think that we're just going to wake up one day and say, okay, we're hearing the call to prayer 5 times a day, and that's normal, not a big deal. I'm going to go to the grocery store, I'm going to go to school. The women have to wear that thing over their head, no big deal. We're just going to go to the grocery store and go to the school. It's the same thing. What's the big deal? Freedom of religion. So at the end of the day, there is a push in this country that I'm so glad is so ferocious right now. And what I mean is they can't cook us in the slow cook as the frog in the pot. They can't do it. They already have it boiling, and they're trying to throw us in. And we're going to jump out immediately and say, hey, screw you. What are you doing? Why are you think you're going to change our country like that? There are people waking up who are Democrat, John Fetterman. There are people waking up who are Democrats going, oh, no, that's not happening here. Bill Maher, he's not somebody I agree with on a lot, and he's an atheist. He said, no, you people are nuts. So I'm really glad it's happening so much in such big volume and all of a sudden. Because if they did a slow cook, in about 100 years from now, this country wouldn't look like it looks now.
Yeah, but Joe, think about it. But they've been slow cooking us. Everybody's waking up to Dearborn, Michigan now, but they've been like that for years. We lost Dearborn, Michigan a long time ago, and I'm curious, when you see the morning call for prayer, their call for prayer, yeah. I want to know where all the protesters and the people that are against the same coach that asked for voluntary involvement in a prayer after a football game, yeah. And why that case had to go to the Supreme Court, but everybody seems to be okay with an Islamic call to prayer every morning, and then talking about the Prophet Muhammad, and everything, every other sentence that Mamzami says. Because my enemy's enemy's my friend, right? Because of the disdain for the Christian conservative, quote unquote, is so great that you'll get in bed with the enemy, and then when your opponent's gone, you realize that the person you're in bed with is really your enemy and will be turned on themselves. We've seen that over and over again, and they don't realize they're being used. People that are left-leaning, progressive, DSA, non-Islamic people are welcoming that ideology because they have such a disdain for the Christian.
Well, I need to listen to Joe's show a lot more. I used to when my schedule lined up, because I'll emerge more of an optimist because I'm not as optimistic. Pags, I'm not, because I hail from a political story where things changed overnight, where people assumed that there was enough sanity at the end of the day that when we made the turn that there would be enough of pushback, enough of a firewall, philosophically, politically, and otherwise, and it didn't turn out to be that way. Americans, I think we've had it so good for so long that we just take for granted how quickly things can change on a dime. And this is why when you talk to Cubans in Florida, I just resonate with that mentality that there's always this sense of alarm, when they're discussing American politics, and you're listening to them, and you can feel the temperatures up when they're talking. It's like, they're prickly about it, and I understand that, and so I'm worried about it, Joe, because I think the numbers are higher than people appreciate it. I'll give you 2 stats that are alarming to me. So the constituency that backed Mamdani was 62% foreign-born. That's not insignificant. And if you look at the recent election in Michigan between Haley Stevens, who you mentioned, it's Abdul Rahman Syed, right? And if you look at those, he didn't win overall by a significant percentage. It was less than 3%, right? It was like 0.3%, 3,200 votes. But when you look at sort of the tour de force behind the votes, 95% of his vote came from an Arabic push. It was like 94.4%. So all of that is really sort of lining up, as one would expect, behind their kind of ethno-national brand. And Americans don't understand that. It's very tribal in nature. They don't really care about the socialistic argument. They think tribally. They want to vote DSA because at the end of the day, it's government heavy, it's centralized government. They want their tribe to win. They want policies that will drive their tribe forward. That's how, look, this is why do you have so much fraud in a Somalian culture? Why? Because it's a low trust society.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's tribe against tribe. They don't really care about principle. They care about getting goods from the government. Americans don't reason like that. They're not worried about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and equality, and equity, and universal health care. They just want the tribe to win. And I worry that we can descend into tribal politics so quickly, so fast, because the numbers we've imported in that ideology has spread so substantially inside the DSA. Maybe I'm overreacting, but that's my concern. I just feel like America's still asleep at the wheel. We don't really recognize what we're dealing with.
A couple of things: change your schedule, start listening to the show again. It's on KTSA Monday through Friday, 5 to 8 p.m. That's the first thing. Second thing, I don't know what the sources are, George. I take you at your word. You're a scientist, but that number in New York is astronomical. I would like to say that can't be true. I know a lot of Jews in New York voted for Mamdani. I know there were a lot of New York born and bred, because it's a very blue city, that voted Mamdani. They voted Mamdani because of his smile and because he said the word affordability. A lot of young people voted Mamdani. How can it possibly be 60 or 70% Arab or foreign born? That's stunning to me. I'd like to see how that works, because that sounds like an outrageous number. And as far as Michigan goes, Michigan is not a very high populated state, and you've got Hamtramck and Dearborn both that are now dominated by Arabs and by those who are Muslim. And they did something very smart. I'm not happy about it, but they did something very smart. What did they do? The mayor came out and he supported President Trump in the last election. Suddenly he looked like a moderate. Suddenly he looked like somebody who you could probably get down with. Okay, we worship different religions, but that's okay, because you really are all for one and one for all. That, while he's telling somebody who's from Dearborn, leave the city, we'll do a parade as you leave the city, you white man. So yeah, we've got to be very vigilant. I don't think the numbers are bigger than I think they are, because I do this every day for a living, and I've got an attachment to the administration, who, by the way, wants it all to look good. They might not be telling me the straight skinny every day, but the numbers are startling enough that we should be awake and should be noticing. We should be calling out when somebody says, as the Prophet Muhammad said. We should be calling them out when somebody plays the call to prayer 5 times a day. Let me go back to that.
Yep.
They always say, well, you're ringing the church bells. What's the difference? The difference is the call to prayer literally says, submit now, get on your knees, do this, blah, blah, blah. It says the whole thing. It's completely foreign to what this country was based on. If you're ringing a church bell, that goes to our history. Even if you're not a religious person, that goes to the fabric of this nation. You don't just import a different religion in and say, we're not going to do this, and it doesn't matter who's bothered by it. The reason why they haven't stopped that yet is because nobody has said, I'm a harmed party. Nobody has said, we're going to go to court and try to stop you, get an injunction, maybe get a ruling that says you can't ring that bell waking my kids up, or having some foreign language through the streets. The reason why they're not doing that, and this is the most startling thing that you may or may not have considered, people are moving instead of digging in and saying, I'm not going to take it. I'll give you an example. Minnesota is a very red state, extremely red geographically. You fly over it in a plane or a helicopter, and it shows the political makeup. It's a very red state geographically. Because of St. Paul and Minneapolis, it is a very blue voting state. In those areas, because I get calls every night, it's one of my biggest stations in Minneapolis. Every night they say, Pags, we had to move north, we had to move west, we had to move east, we had to get out of here, we had to go upstate, we had to get away from these nut jobs. And my answer is, well, then you ceded it to them. You handed them what it was that was yours. And you have to now take it back. You should move back to Minneapolis. You should move back to Detroit. You should move back to New York City. And you should say, this is our city. This isn't okay. Because as you cede that land, they will never give it up, as you said. I mean, they do eventually, because eventually the Muslims had to leave Spain because they were conquered. But they were there, 600 years? So it takes a long time. And these guys and gals are in it for the long haul. So, I mean, where I am on it is I am optimistic, because nationalism does get restored when you have a more conservative administration, when you have lower taxes, lower regulation. But we have to be smart. The smiling Obamas and the smiling Mamdanis and the smiling Bernie Sanders are getting over on young people, and they're going to get into their voting age in this sensibility, plus they're learning it in school, they're learning it in college, the sensibility that this is a better thing if we're socialist. It's okay if we've got Sharia law, it's a big deal. Yeah, the Constitution is 200 some odd years old. Why does that matter anymore? We have to be vigilant on that. Not on who the individuals are moving in. We have to make them understand those individuals can move here, but they have to be more like us, not us more like them.
I agree. No, there's not an assimilation. We always talk about Rome.
That's it.
Falling
Yes.
Rome fell not from the outside, but from the inside, and that's what's happening to us. But Pags, what in your opinion, what's the answer? Because, we can say move back into Detroit, move back into New York, but
Yeah.
ones and twos at a time, they're going like, I'm walking into a quicksand. Why am I going to subject myself to that? I mean, they didn't come in ones and twos. And again, I had a discussion before I ask you, before you give me your answer of what the answer is. I want to say this because I was having a discussion with a dear friend of mine who leans very left. And I said, tell me the last time you heard of a pride parade in an Islamic theocratic country.
Right.
Just, I'll wait. Where's the free speech? Just show me the protest. I mean, because when they put their mats out and they pray in the street, they don't do that in Islamic countries. That's not part of their religion per se. To block a street or a sidewalk, that's a power move here. They're doing that on purpose, and we fall for it because people don't want to be called names. So when I look, the Christian will try to convince somebody to live a different life, love on them, give them good advice, show them friendship, not threaten them and treat them differently. But when you go to these Islamic countries, there is no freedom. There's no freedom of thought. There's no freedom of speech. There's no freedom to protest and air your addresses against the government. And there's definitely not pride parades and all this other stuff, whether we agree with them or not. So I put that on the shelf to my left-leaning progressive friends that
Did they have an answer?
No, they have no answer. They don't want to answer that question because they have to vote the tribe. The tribe says go against the Christian, go against the conservative, and that's the mantra. That's the marching orders for now until later on they're going to be the subject to it. Because your discussion about Medina is true. I mean, the Jews welcomed them in, the Islamic people into Medina, and the factions within the Jewish population there, they didn't like each other. So this faction said, you know what, those Islamic people are taking out that group of Jews. I don't like them anyway. They're my friend. And take out that group too. Take out that group too. And then it was finally just them and the Islamic people. And they're like, you're not my friend. You were my puppet. And then that's how they took over Medina. So it's the same playbook, Pags. But what's the answer, I guess, ultimately?
Voting. The answer is voting. It sounds simple. It's not. It's not simple at all. That's why the Save America Act is so important. You've got this weak doofus, John Thune, as the majority leader in the Senate, who will not even end the filibuster to pass the Save America Act. For those who are wondering, the Save America Act is very simple. You've got to prove that you're an American citizen when you register to vote. What that means is if you're already an American citizen and you're already registered to vote, you don't have to do anything. You already are. But if you are now going to register to vote for the first time, you've got to prove that you're an American citizen. That's simple. Yeah, but I got married and I changed my name. All right, stupid. You've got the paper that said you changed your name. This is who you were. This is what you're called now. That proves who you are. This is very simple. Women aren't dumb. Women are very smart. But the left wants us to think women are dumb. And you also have to have a photo ID issued by the government when you go and vote. So you register to vote. You're a citizen. You have the right to vote. You show up, you show a photo ID given by the government. That's a poll tax. You're making me buy a government ID. No, we'll give it to you for free. Okay, now there's no poll tax. You show up, show an ID, but black people and Hispanics don't know how to get an ID. I don't know. Nico, you're Hispanic. You got an ID?
I do.
How'd you figure that out? Every black friend I have, and I've got plenty, all have IDs. I've never met anybody of any race or ancestry or background who's an American citizen that didn't know how to get a photo ID from the government. So without passing that, we're allowing people to do anything they want. You realize that there was just an election for mayor of Los Angeles, right? It took them 32 days to count the ballots. Help me understand how it takes 32 days, but 600 million people can vote in India, and we know that night who won. How is that possible? How is it possible that in 2020, we went to bed and Trump was the winner, the next morning Biden won? I mean, we have to do what the DOJ wants to do. Good friend of mine, Harmeet Dillon, who's the Civil Rights Division Assistant Attorney General, comes on the show all the time. She has subpoenaed every single state to turn over their voter rolls. We have to purge the rolls of anybody who's not allowed to vote. And they simply won't do it. Minnesota won't turn them over. Michigan won't turn them over. Find a blue state that won't turn them over. Some red states like Georgia are giving her a hard time. Why is that? If we can fix the vote, if we can make sure that there's no fraud in our voting, if we can make sure that only American citizens are voting, it would be much simpler to fix this. Trump is trying to do it, but you've got the U.S. Senate that won't do the job that it has to do. And one last thing. Do you know how many senators it takes to get rid of the majority leader? Any idea?
I don't.
There are 53 Republican senators, allegedly. Mitch McConnell, I don't know if he's alive or not, who knows. But it's 53 allegedly in the United States Senate. You only need half. If you had 27, because you can't have 26 and a half, if you had 27 senators say, Thune, you got to go. Let's put Mike Lee in there. Let's put Ted Cruz in there. Let's put Rick Scott in there. They can go in that day and make it a talking filibuster, which is very simple. You can filibuster all you want as long as you still have breath and you're awake. If you're done and you're out of breath and you're too tired to continue, guess what? We're going to go to cloture, and now we're going to vote on this thing. They allegedly have the votes for the Save America Act. It's at least 50-50, and then J.D. Vance would break the tie, but they won't do it. And all they have to do is get rid of Thune, and now you can make sure that the vote is actually real. I don't think the DSA and Democrats are getting the number of votes we're told they're getting. Can't prove it, but I don't think they are. I can prove it if we know that the elections are without fraud.
Well, Joe, but isn't it more than that? Because what George has been bitching about for years, and it's valid. He's been talking about getting getting academia back, getting the schools back, because
Yes.
the younger voters are voting this way. So they're born here, and they're born to have a disdain for this country. Look, this country is not perfect, but the ideas of this country of freedom, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, this idea that we're a big citizen in a small government, and those are wonderful ideas. Free thought, free expression. This is what we want. But the young people are taught to vote. So even if we get voting back and we say, okay, here's my ID, I'm an American citizen, I'm still voting this way. Isn't it a twofer? Isn't it the voting and academia? And then what do you do with the people that are here? Is there some type of removal process for them that I know some people have suggested?
Yeah.
Well, yes. Go ahead, George.
Let me piggyback on that a little bit, Joe, because I mean, everything you said in terms of what needs to be done, amen to that. But you're saying if, I'm with you, it's if, because I don't know that we have the political resolve, political will, certainly not inside the Senate. It hasn't been terribly impressive. And so you get rid of a Thune, and I'm no John Thune fan, but okay, but there's others like him. He's not the only guy. This is systemic, I think, inside the Senate. I don't know, man. I don't think we have the political resolve. In the meantime, the American academic system is cranking out Democrat voters. And so when they come out and they hear these outrageous things, like things free stuff will just literally parachute out of the sky. And they think that's normal. So they hear somebody talking like that. They've been taught that. They've been, quote unquote, tested on that. And so they gravitate towards that. And we're subsidizing this ideology. So my concern is speed here. I'm concerned at the speed at which they're moving and the slowness at our ability to wake up and recognize what we're really dealing with. That's what I'm worried about. So what do you think about that? It's an inertia issue, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I made several suggestions as to who could be the Senate Majority Leader other than Thune, and I think that Cruz and Rick Scott from Florida, Mike Lee from Utah, I think Ron Johnson from Wisconsin would be great. These are the people that called out, people like Fauci called out the vote in 2020. So you could do that, but you're right. Why can't we get 27? So it must mean that they're all in the same group and they just won't put 27 together, which actually makes me sick. But I do want to comment on the young people. I'm going to say this out of love. You're wrong, and here's why you're wrong. The young people got President Trump voted back in 2024. That was because they believed in Charlie Kirk, my friend. He was on the show 6 times. He believed in that movement. He believed in what Kirk was saying. He believed the debates that Kirk was winning. The problem is, and here's where you become right, whereas you would have been wrong a year ago. Now that he's been gone for almost a year, there's a battle to get that control. Who's going to be the voice to the young people? The left is putting people up like Abdul Rahman Mohammed al-Sayed and people like Zoran Mamdani. They're putting people up like that are young and hip and got nice hair and a nice smile and they nice swagger when they walk. They're putting them up. Who are we putting up? A bunch of idiots fighting with each other. It reminds me of 2009. In 2009, the Tea Party movement started. Taxed enough already. It's allegedly an acronym, Tea Party. We had the big get-together in Alamo Plaza. 14,000 people were there. I was there. Glenn Beck was there. Ted Nugent was playing the guitar. Janine Turner was there. It was all for one for all. We were going to stop Obama from overrunning us with taxation and regulation. What happened? Not long after it splintered. Then there were 10 Tea Parties. Then there were 15 Tea Parties. Then they all hated each other. And who hates this one? Whose faction is better? We have to be better as conservatives. We have to make a united front. And it doesn't have to be one Charlie Kirk. He's going to be hard to emulate. It's got to be a united front, though, to grab those people by the ear that we had just a year and a half ago when they voted. You have to grab them by the ear and say, it's still okay to be a conservative, still okay to love the country, still okay to be white, Christian, and male, and straight. It's still okay to be all of those things. And we don't have that voice right now, because every time somebody would prop them up with socialism or free stuff, Charlie Kirk would punch him in the face. That's why they had to take him out. So you're right now, but I think we did have them, and they're not a lost cause. Now, if you say, Joe, how do we get him back? I don't know.
Well, I think, Pags, you're 100% right, by the way. And it's on video, so me admitting that Pags is right. But
it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
But do you like my shirt?
Well, it's a little big for you, but here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. I guess I baked into my comment
Yeah.
the Charlie factor, because if you would watch our show every once in a while, I think it was a
This
huge
isn't the
loss.
first show?
No,
sorry.
inaugural, the first episode.
I thought it was the inaugural episode. I was excited.
It's a huge loss. It was a huge loss, Charlie. I agree with you. And to be honest with you, I know this is not this conversation, so I won't go down this rabbit hole. I've constructively criticized Trump, because I think the Republicans, including Trump, have squandered God's grace on this country. I thought the election was amazing. The tent had grown. People are doing the dance. Not that it's not about Trump; it's about the movement, not him.
Yes.
People were wearing red hats. People were proud to have a flag. Now,
Yes.
like you said, we're splintered in just 2 years. We've splintered the movement. And conservative is not a bad word. I say this to my Democrat friends. Conservative just means to hold things together.
Yeah.
If a doctor says, Pags, I'm going to take a conservative approach to your treatment, that means I'm going to try not to cut you open. I'm going to try to keep you together and get you better at the same time.
Right.
What are we trying to hold together? A set of ideas. That's it. They don't belong to a platform initially. When you look at George Washington and our founding fathers, it's a set of ideas that we all gathered around to have freedom and to have liberty.
Amen. Joe, it sounded like you said I was wrong, but then you explained, after your explanation, I sounded kind of right. Not because I'm going to be right, but because here's what I want to understand. Maybe you can help me. So they didn't vote for Trump because this spirit of conservatism awakened inside of them. It's because they want their shit, if you'll excuse me. What were the two main issues that drove people to the polls? They were immigration and economics. And so the reality is they're getting worthless college degrees that come out. There's no jobs. Trump's a business guy, and Trump 1.0, he did pretty good in turning around the business situation of the country.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, they were fatigued under this Biden shit show. And so Trump offered a way out. Plus, they ran a great campaign. I mean, they were going on a podcast. They had a great communication strategy. You got to give kudos to that.
And that was because of Barron Trump. Barron actually pushed his dad.
Yes,
I heard about that.
So what happens? If a true conservative young person is going to recognize, like a true conservative old person, that you don't turn around a devastating economic situation in 10 minutes. And so what Trump's been trying to do is go back and sort of, rebuild the lost fundamentals. That stuff takes time. And so now that hasn't happened, I think we're seeing a bit of a jumping ship, because if you look at the polls, and you asked me for sources, and I owe you those sources. The sources on Mamdani, there were 3 polls that I thought was interesting. The reason I like them is because there's data tables behind them, and it gives me a chance to analyze them.
Yeah.
I'd like to try to go behind the headlines. There was a Patriot polling survey right after the election, of the Mamdani election, where they compared his performance along with Cuomo and Sliwa. And that's where that 62% foreign-born came down. And they broke it down in tables in terms of
Well, I'm just wondering, are they saying 62% decided on him, but 62% of his vote could not have been foreign-born?
60% of the electorate that voted was foreign-born voted for him was foreign-born. And then
right, of his vote, but not of the electorate. I'm saying
that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Go ahead.
And then 24% for Cuomo was foreign-born. It was like 12% for Sliwa.
Right.
I mean, the numbers were just astronomically different. I thought it was interesting to note. And then there's a Washington Ipsos poll that has kind of tracked multiple polls over time, about every 30 days, and they're showing that there's just a wave of voters between 18 and 29 that are voting for the DSA. And on affordability issues. So those same voters that swarm for Trump because of an economic promise, right? They chased a shiny object. Now they're going to the Democrat Socialists of America because the promises sound so great, right? Equality.
Right.
It's an overnight promise. And so, and to them, they've been raised on this shit. So they figured they'll just swipe the screen and all of a sudden they'll have their rent paid for. So I guess my point is, at the end of the day, I think that we fail to recognize that these people who are 18 to 29 years of age, this is the future. And so that number's building every day. And they're growing up with a very different view of America. And I don't see anything to reverse that trend. And then you brought up the fact that there's a lack of unity. I just think it's a bit of a perfect storm. And so I'm pushing back a little bit because I'm wondering, don't you think education should be front and center? And it seems to be kind of it seems like an artifact of our politics. It doesn't, I think it's the most sort of mission critical issue. And I don't hear a single politician talking about that like it's an existential thing. I guess I'll shut up now, but those are my thoughts.
Well, you and I agree on most. You are wrong that they were pumping out people who are ready to vote for some radical leftist DSA in 24. Now, you weren't referring to 24, you're referring to now, so you're right.
Now, yes, sir.
Right, but here's my suggestion. There's no way the people that voted for Trump in 24 suddenly became DSA people, and that's happening in droves. Can it happen? I believe it can. I think what's more likely, and again, you and I agree, I'm not debating you. What's more likely is that these people will not vote in this midterm. And that's a problem. Because those who voted for Trump, I think, didn't get exactly what they wanted from Trump, especially with this Iran war. And the fact is, they were voting on immigration. The border was huge, and the economy was huge. It was one of those two was your top priority in 2024, and that's why Trump won, and he won as big as he did. That said, I don't think they're going to hold their nose and go vote Democrat or DSA. I think they're going to say, screw you, there's a basketball game on. I'm not going to go watch. I'm not going to go vote. Forget you, I got a date that night. I'm busy. I can't. I gave you my time last time. You didn't do anything that you said that you would do, so therefore I'm not going to do it. Let's go to the overarching topic that I haven't commented on yet at all. Linda McMahon is the Secretary of Education.
Okay.
Her job is to get rid of her job. Her job is to close down the Department of Education that began when? During Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter put in the Department of Education for no reason other than a federal takeover of our educational system. There's no reason for it. It's not in the Constitution. Doesn't say the federal government will have any purview over this in the first 9 amendments. There should not be a federal Department of Education. That spending, you can Google this, is probably 40, 50, 60 billion a year now on indoctrinating our children. Remember how bad it got under Obama? When Arnie Duncan, who was the Secretary of Education, put out a pamphlet for all public school kids that said, what can I do for my president today? What the? Where do we live? The Soviet Union, North Korea? I mean, is it Cuba? Where do we live that would be put out by a central government educational system? It's got to go away. It's got to be disbanded. All that money that's sucked out of the states has to go back to the states, and you and Nico and everybody watching and I should have the biggest say because we're parents. We're community members. We want better, productive members of the community. So I agree with both of you wholeheartedly that the educational system in this country sucks. It's screwed up, it's backward, and it is, please, go praise the king. When there's a Democrat, when there's a Republican, the education sucks. How dare you say there's a Bible story in school? It has to go away. We should, on a local basis, go to the school boards, have control of the school boards, have control of where our property tax money is going and how that education is done. Now, me saying all of that sounds good. How do you do it? I want the president to do what he said he would do, and getting rid of the Department of Education was a big one, and that should be done. And then that would stop what you're rightfully saying today, anybody coming out of high school or college going, I want free stuff, socialism is great.
But
That's what you have to do.
well, how would that work in Dearborn, Michigan, if there's no Department of Education? So then their local school board would vote in some type of curriculum that would push Sharia law or
You
push
can't.
something?
It's antithetical to the Constitution. You cannot put in Sharia law in a public
my
school.
point is that
It's
somebody
illegal.
would bring a suit, and then it would go to a federal court.
Yeah.
But you're just saying that it would go back to the local school boards. But if it pushed something that was antithetical to our constitutional republic, then there's a lawsuit theoretically, and then it goes all the way up to the court.
Well, the
system.
lawsuit would be very easily won. It's antithetical to the Constitution. You cannot push Sharia law that says women are half of men, that you have to cover from top to toe. I mean, you just can't work. If it does, then the country's over. But you're right, especially the way the Supreme Court sits now. But I would never get as far as the Supreme Court. Let me explain it better. If you get rid of the Department of Education, the states all get the money back. State boards of education would be deciding things, and Hamtramck and Dearborn don't control the State Board of Education in Michigan. Then our property tax locally would go into the local school boards, and that would build the local schools and hire the faculty and so on and so forth. They would try, no doubt. There you go, George. I'm here to tell you, they will try to push their own ideology through education, but it is illegal. It's against the law, and that would have to be challenged. I would think they wouldn't even try. I guess they'll try. In their own houses, they could have Sharia law if they want. We wouldn't even know. But to do it in a public school that's being funded by the people, you can't do that.
And when people need to understand, this is a real thing. You know, a lot of my friends that lean left are just, they go, oh, quit
How many
talking
of these
about
friends
the
do you
boogie."
have? These left-leaning
Four. I have
friends.
four of them. I have four of them. You're a friend and a half with half the
more than
shirt.
two.
Wow,
But
wow.
But I'm just saying, I like it. I'm teasing. Flex, do the right arm real quick. There it is. Look at
Oh,
that
my
thing.
goodness.
You
Yeah,
got a
very
license for that
Crazy.
thing?
All right,
Bigger than
guys.
your
But-
head.
But my point is, people don't really. They say, "Oh, quit talking about the boogeyman, and it's not a boogeyman.
Well, it's not the boogeyman.
It's not a boogeyman." I go, we have example after example. All we got to do is look at the experiment of the world, wherever Islam took over theocratically in the government, and then see how if there's freedom, even for your issues. I tell these people, even for your issues, they will not thrive. So, and that's where Bill Maher has it right. To your point, I do like Bill Maher. I disagree with him on a lot of issues, but good for him on free speech, on the reality of Islam and the threat to this country, and and he's absolutely against cancel culture, which I love.
Yeah.
Islam is not going to come in on the front end, to your point. It's going to come in on the back end of the whole equity argument. And then once they've established sufficient constituencies, then I think you're going to see them pre and prop up. And I guess that's what I'm thinking here. You're saying at the federal level, so let's say we eliminated the Department of Education.
Yes.
I mean, you basically have mini hubs of federal interests in every state. I mean, even in red states, the people who are in charge, administrators, staff, these are not people who are generally conservatives. They're not conservatively aligned. And so I realize there's exceptions to that. But generally speaking, curricula are lean very, very left across most states, including many red cities. So we have our work cut out for us. I guess I'm wondering, there's got to be, we can't just address this federally. There's got to be a way to sort of implement this at the state level to make sure that the good work and the important work at the federal level actually grows some legs. Because I'm not look, we read stories all the time, especially during the COVID era. It was fascinating to me how even in deeply conservative areas, you saw stuff that was just lunacy. And conservatives seem to be the majority, but there didn't seem to be a unified voice to push back on this kind of central planning.
There was.
mentality.
Well, let me say this though. There was, but we were squelched. Like I was banned on TikTok, not TikTok. I was banned on YouTube. I was banned on Facebook because I dared interview Rudy Giuliani or I had Mike Lindell on. Yeah. When I talked about the true adverse effects of those shots that we should not have been forced to take, I was taken down. I got strikes. So they were doing all they could to hide the real information. So you're right.
How did that happen, Joe? How did that happen? How were you squelched? Because you'd think that
it's like it was canceled.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. I mean,
it happened because these private industries decided that I wasn't telling the truth when I was. And either they were doing the bidding of the big pharma companies or they were doing the bidding of big voting or whatever, but they needed to shut me up because if I kept speaking, people would end up learning from me. So you're right. We have to make sure that we keep it all above board, keep it all visible, keep it all with the spotlight on it. Like I never got a shot. I wore a mask once because I had to fly to go see my mother, and it's the only time I wore it. Many people had to do it to keep their livelihood. They had to do it in New York to go to a restaurant, to go to a show. It was disgusting. But it did show, it was a government experiment to show that they could control the people if they wanted to. And we didn't push back enough. Some of us did. We tried our best. But a lot of people weren't able to or else they lose their livelihoods. They had that much control. So let's finish on education this way. The way that you do it is you get rid of all teachers' unions. There should not be any. There should not be any unionization of education that's being subsidized with the taxpayers. That makes no sense. You want to unionize American auto workers? Sure. The UAW, have a nice day. You guys can be Chevy and you could be Ford, you could be Dodge, whatever you want to be, but that's not an entity that's being subsidized by us. Not now. I guess it was probably in the late 2000s. But having said that, if we're going to pay for the education, a couple of things have to happen. Number one, no unionization. Are you stupid? Number two, no tenure. If you suck, you can get kicked out. Number three, we must allow for competition, and that goes to the school of choice thing, where if I want to go and send my kid to a charter school or a private school, that public school should have to deal with that competition and raise its game to give those who don't want to send their kids to these other places a better education. It's very simple. What I just said is simple to do. There is no wherewithal because a lot of money is involved. And when there's a lot of money involved, people don't want to get up. They don't want to give up. Remember what happened during COVID when they were doing this teleschooling, the schooling over, online? The teachers in California did not want to go back to the classroom because they were vacationing in Puerto Rico. I mean, they literally were doing their classes from the beach somewhere, and they didn't want to go back to class. And because they were allowed to do this, they acted like, well, we're afraid of getting sick or the COVID might do this thing. We have to stop that garbage. We have to make them do what you and I have to do in our businesses. Nico has to compete in his law firm. I have to compete as a talk show host. We should be able to compete with people. And if our product is good enough, it will last and the taxpayers will continue to fund it. But if you got here's a union in between, then there's another union on the national level. Then there's a part of education that might give you some money if you do this, that, and the other, and jump through those hoops. It's a very simple equation to solve. They don't want to, but if we have more voices like yours and mine, maybe we can.
Pegs, look, you're an important guy. I know you got to get to bed and put the cucumbers on your eyes and get a tighter shirt on, but I appreciate you giving us your time.
Are we still on? I was going to take my shirt off.
No, take it easy. We don't want to see the pancakes. No, but all joking aside, you know, you're in high demand. We're humbled that you would take the time just to give us your thoughts and your voice on the little show like ours. I really appreciate you as my friend, as a professional. Love your work. Love your boldness. I think you are stewarding what God has entrusted you very, very well. I know your faith. I know your character, and I'm just a huge fan. Thank you very much for blessing us tonight, Pegs.
That was very, very nice of you. Nico, thank you. I love the program. You guys curse up a storm. Nico, I don't think did at all. George dropped a few S-bombs. But I'm just not able. You know, away from a microphone, I'm kind of a pig. I just can't do it into this thing. I can't.
I know, bro. It's not a requirement to be on the show to drop an F-bomb. Don't worry about it unless it's
telling you beforehand I had to say 2 F-bombs and 1 S. And I was like, I can't do it, Nico. Let me say this. Don't tell me that you're a small show. Don't tell me that you're insignificant. You're not. You guys are very, very important. I mean, you made me think a lot tonight. I'm glad that we can mix some stuff up. The one thing that I would suggest to anybody who's watching and listening, and to both of you, and I'm sure you two are already doing this, when somebody suggests, and they're a young person, that socialism is the way to go, the very simple answer to them is, you get an A in class. Bobby gets an F in class. Let's give you both a C and feel good about it. And they will immediately say, I worked for that A. Then you're not for socialism. Exactly. It's that simple. Make it about them. I'm going to take from you to give to that guy. You cool with that? They will not be cool with that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Great show, guys. Thank you for having me.
Play out the result of the idea. Yeah, good idea.
Pax, thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Love you. God bless you. Thank you for being on.
Love you too. Thank you for having me, guys. Good to see you.
Papa. God bless you.